Hey everyone, welcome back to Free the Money. Today I'm going to be joined by Paul Puey, who is the CEO and co-founder of Edge. Edge is a leading wallet in privacy, security, user experience, and really enabling everyday people to be able to use crypto. Let's get right into the show. Hi, Paul. Welcome to Free the Money. It is an honor to have you. I am a big believer and supporter of Edge, hence why I am rocking some of you guys' merchandise right here.
The
Edge is
merch, the themes,
definitely,
the colors, and everything. I love
yeah,
it.
and the color scheme. Edge is
Mm.
definitely my favorite non-custodial wallet. So it's really an honor to have you on the show today.
Great. Yeah, definitely an honor to have myself on your show. So thanks for having me. Glad to get into some discussions. Hopefully, we can give some insights to your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that you have been in Bitcoin since 2013. That is a long time. You were in Bitcoin when a lot of people thought it was a scam. I guess what made you what did you see in Bitcoin back then that convinced you to sort of go all in and then obviously build in the space?
For a number of years before I discovered Bitcoin, I'd gone down the orange pill, the red pill, whatever you want to call it, path of realizing that the world around us has been co-opted. We have all been misled, fed lies in the narrative of the kind of the largest institutions of our world, whether it be governments or large companies. And I actually argue with a lot of libertarians about the difference between governments and large companies. To me, they're
Yeah.
kind of the same. Um, and so after going down that rabbit hole and starting to have that realization, especially initially in more of the health and wellness space and pharma space, having that realization, I always felt a bit helpless. Like I didn't know what I could do. And then I discovered Bitcoin. I'm like, wow, this is the rug that I can pull. Maybe a slow pull, slow, but it was something I could tug on because it was one of the first real technologies. Plus, I was also a technologist. I, worked in Silicon Valley for a good number of years. I studied electrical engineering and computer science, but it fit both an ideological need, and desire that I had, as well as, the interest in technology. And so that's really what kind of brought me to it and made me so aligned with it. That kind of twofold. Ironically, finance was the last thing that interested me. I never thought I would
Okay.
ever get a job in finance, but this is so different than finance in many ways. Yeah,
Yeah.
money's moving. We're enabling people to transact freely cross borders, but it's really finance is a means to an end. The end is financial freedom
Uh-huh.
and freedom from a lot of the largest establishments in our world is kind of for me the end goal. But yeah, that was kind of my very early days of why I found it compelling to
Yeah.
begin with.
Yeah, I really like the point you brought up about private companies also really being a huge risk to our freedoms these days. And I think we're seeing
Oh.
that more so now than ever. And I know a mutual friend of ours is Aaron Day, and he really gets in pretty deep into that and the threats of technocracy. And I think people are finally opening their eyes to that. But yeah, I would just also, there's so many wallets out there. And what I really love about Edge is how it's really such a user first app. I love how, you don't have to note your seed phrases. That's really what sold me on Edge and how, you just have a username and password. The private keys are encrypted on the device and backed up automatically. And I've done a lot of videos showcasing this on my page.
Yeah.
And I just think that this makes it so much easier for mass adoption. And, I always talk about my grandma here on my show, and I say, if something's granny proof, that's how the masses can really start using a product. And I would love just to see more crypto projects really, I guess, emulating that, because I think it is important. And we are seeing that with a lot of different cryptocurrencies right now. But I guess, could you just explain about how the Edge app works and how your private keys are encrypted?
Yeah, so I like that you had mentioned that you appreciated that piece of Edge, and I think that's actually been a double-edged sword for us, in all honesty, because we've made it really easy for people. There's another great guy in the Liberty space, just like Aaron Day, Ernie Hancock. I'm not sure if you've ever met
Yeah.
or heard of him, but when we had met him in 2014 or 15, really early on in the era of Edge, I think it was 2015. He gave us a grilling. He's just one of those guys like, all right, well, you do this, do you do this? And do I have to give you up this information and blah, 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 you know? And when we finally kind of surpassed that line in the sand that he had, it was like, oh, this is actually really cool. And he actually used our app. He's like, oh my gosh, these guys built what he calls the grandma just button. I'm not sure you've heard this
Yeah.
term. He
I
made this funny
actually I
term.
have it.
Yeah, the grandma just button, because he's like, it's for grandmas. Grandmas actually can use this thing.
Yeah.
And the just button is because every time he asks some, techno dude, like, how do I do this? He goes, oh, well, you just do that. I go, well, I don't know. There's no just button. Where's this just that you keep seeing? Because it's like 5 or 6 different steps that I just have to do. So I just want this one button that you keep saying is just, all I have to do is just this.
Yeah.
And so he kind of coined that term as the grandma just button. He's, whatever he uses, hey, does it have the grandma just button? And so we have obviously abstract, and that's what technology is about. You take something complex, you abstract it. But what's the double-edged sword when you do that is all the people that understand all of those 5 steps get alienated. And take you back in time into the 80s, this happened with the early launch of the first Macintosh. I'm not sure if you followed the story of Steve Jobs, but he hated the Apple II, right? The Apple II, which made him millions and had launched Apple into stardom. They had Apple I, which is literally basically a circuit board, right? You had to buy this thing at a little electronic shop and assemble it together. That was the Apple I. And it was really for hobbyists. And he's like,
Okay.
well, it's a computer, but like 0.01% of the population can use it. Then came the Apple II. Now that launched him into stardom because now you can actually buy something, plug it with a monitor. Yeah, you have to type in commands, but you didn't have to assemble it. But he genuinely actually hated a lot of the Apple II because in order for you to run a program, you had to type characters on the computer to launch it. You'd put a disk, and type a bunch of characters to say, launch this program, blah, blah, blah. And I grew up also in the 80s where my computer, not an Apple, was a Commodore, where I remember to this day, load, quote, star, quote, comma 8, comma 1 to launch whatever app you wanted to launch. You have to type that in. Of course, his final dream was the Mac, right? That was his dream, for him to build. And it took tons of effort, a lot of years, lost a lot of money for Apple to get it to market. And when he launched it, it's like, look how elegant and beautiful this is. All the Apple fans, almost all of them, hated it. Because it's like, well, where's the screws for me to open it to put in cards to upgrade the thing? Where's the terminal where I can type in commands to launch programs? That all disappeared. It's just a mouse, click, boom. It's just there. And so after over a decade of people saying repeatedly, number one thing you do in crypto is A, own your keys. B, the only way you own your keys is to write down your keys. Once you're introduced to the Macintosh of crypto, all the Apple IIe fans get alienated by it. And so we almost need like a shifting of the guard to realize that, hey, there are better options for, the 99 percentile of people, not the 1 percentile that have been using crypto for the past decade. And unfortunately, as opposed to us migrating the guard from write down your seed to, hey, apps like Edge and others where we abstract out the seed, unfortunately, the migration of the guard has gone to, let me just put it in Coinbase. Let me just put it in Binance. It's like the wrong migration. But to us, that is the end goal. Those are the competitors, not the other similar apps to us, like an Exodus or a Cake Wallet. To us, who we want to really pull users from are those people that are putting stuff inside of like fully centralized exchanges. And we try to build, hey, what's the user experience you can build to get those users? Because all the other ones aren't, I don't feel like they're going to get them because they're too different, they're too alienating, and they're very unforgiving.
No, absolutely. And I've talked with a couple other people about the same issue of how to pull users from Coinbase and Binance. And obviously, those are the masses. And it seems like every month you guys have different integrations that are making you be able to do so many different things in Edge rather than just, investing in cryptocurrencies. You're able to transact. You have DEXs. And I definitely want to get into that because I think that's really important. It seems like now decentralized cross-chain exchanges are everywhere, and you have quite a few in Edge, and it's pretty impressive. I'd love to get into that a little bit.
Yeah, and the great thing about DEXs is it completes the story of self-custody being functionally complete or getting closer to being functionally complete with the centralized exchanges. So before, in Edge, sure, you can do swaps, but you'll pretty much need a centralized exchange, even if it's just a pass-through. It's like Bitcoin goes there, Ethereum comes back, or USDC or USDT or whatnot. Now we can do that through a DEX. early implementations, which is what we have, is you can swap, right? But DEXs are getting much richer now, where not only can you just simply swap one asset for another, you could put in a limit order. And we don't support that yet in Edge, but that's something that DEXs now can support. You can put in a limit order, you can put in a stop limit order, you can do leverage as well. So a lot more
Yeah.
of the trading functionality that people are used to with centralized exchanges are migrating over to DEXs. And now you're really going to eat the lunch of centralized exchanges, because then anybody in the world can access them. No
Mhm.
KYC needed at all. No verification. The process of getting onboarded into it is now only as hard as your wallet makes it, not how hard the exchange makes it, plus what the government makes it, plus what the banking cartel says to the exchange that they have to
Yeah.
make, all the difficulties that all these different parties will impart to the exchange. Now it's just, software. How easy can the software make it? And so, we're a small team, and, building all those integrations is tough, but know that especially in this era of agentic development, we're able to, I think our industry can move much faster when we're
Mhm.
only bottlenecked by software,
Yeah.
not bottlenecked by all of the red tape. And that's what,
Yeah.
generally makes me excited about crypto, is that is the only bottleneck is software.
Yeah. I guess what type of threats are you seeing in DeFi right now, coming from government regulation, or what are
You
you
know,
fearful of?
it's one of those, like, I know that government can go full draconian and squash DeFi by
Mhm.
saying things like, if you kind of like what they tried to do with Tornado Cash, like, if you
Yeah.
touch it, you're a bad guy. And then they realize, well, they can't really do that because, well, someone could take Tornado Cash money and dust a whole bunch of people, and suddenly everyone's a bad guy. Um, and at least the current administration is a little bit less,
Yeah.
hostile. I know Aaron Day is very against the current administration. He actually says that he would rather have, the
Yeah.
previous prior administration, and we can disagree on things. I'll debate him on that. But um, while that is entirely possible, they can go full draconian. Fundamentally, I think that they have bigger fish to fry and
Okay.
bigger targets within the cryptocurrency space. And within the crypto space, the low-hanging fruit are more of the centralized exchanges, right? They are
Mhm.
the choke points. Like choke point 2.0 was entirely targeting the banking system and the centralized exchanges, right? While they said things about self-custody wallets and
Mhm.
software, they were all very, very vague threats.
Okay.
Like there was a paper put out. I don't know if it was during the Biden administration. A paper was put out by, I think, the FBI. I can't remember what entity, what three-letter agency it was, and it was really intended to scare people from using, scare them away from using self-custody solutions,
Mhm.
right? And they use terms like they're risky, they're dangerous, they are unlicensed. But where's the actual threat there,
Yeah.
right? It was a shallow threat just meant to create fear.
Mhm.
Um, Aside from that, they know that they don't have a lot of ground to stand on, and they would have to go much more draconian to take out the companies and the developers. And they can even take out the companies. They got to say, hey, what you're doing at Edge is illegal. Okay, we're shut down. Well, there's open source code someone could download, build himself, and run. And
Yeah.
so they know that they would be shutting down the ability for a lot of the legitimate users that aren't doing anything
Mhm.
nefarious, what they define as nefarious, because nefarious is like heavily disagreed on. But they would not be able to squash what they deem as nefarious, because those people will easily jump through the hoops. So yes, they can. It's not the thing that I lose sleep at night. I generally
Okay.
don't. I know it can happen, all right?
Yeah.
But when you're building a company, you've got, you're in a meteor shower of challenges,
Yeah.
right? And you just got to choose what's the battle you're going to pick. That one isn't one of them, right? If
Okay.
I was an actual money transmitter, if any money flowed through our company that were our own user funds,
Mhm.
in any way, shape, or form, then I would worry about it.
Yeah.
But we go through a great amount of effort to make sure that user funds don't travel through our company. It's only our money, and that we are as far away as possible from being deemed a facilitator of a transaction,
Okay.
as opposed to just software where the user does it themselves. So yeah, it
Okay.
doesn't concern me
Yeah.
right now. But
That's
yeah,
good to know, and it seems like in DC there's a lot of conversation about tokenization, and it's great that there is open dialogue, so I do think we are moving forward on that front. Obviously, I know Roman Storm will be retried, so
yeah.
praying for him, and I hope, I hope he's a free man, obviously, because that's, that would be a huge loss for DeFi, for
Yeah.
code, freedom of speech. We
For
can go
privacy,
on.
the big one is
Yeah,
privacy, which is
for
we're big
privacy,
fans of,
yeah. Of course, of
and
course. So,
yeah.
I think that will be, like, very monumental. So I'm eager to see what will happen on that front. Speaking about privacy, you and I think, originally connected because of Zano, and
Yeah.
I know,
Awesome
Edge
project.
integrates with Bridgeless, confidential layer, allowing, users to be able to take transparent assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum and basically make them private on Zano's blockchain. So I'd love to get into that.
Yeah, let's talk about the Zano project. I mean, I'm sure yeah, I know you've had them on your show before,
Yeah,
talking about
Mr.
the
Quibbs.
project. And yeah, Quibs, great guy. I've also had a fortune of interviewing him a couple times for Edge. But yeah, what made Zano really compelling? I met them actually at Monerotopia
Okay, cool.
over a year ago, and what made it compelling was, like, I think threefold. Number one, a lot of people will write them off as, oh, a Monero fork because it uses the same technology,
Mhm,
CryptoNote, you know, underneath the hood, but these guys have been around since before Monero was launched, right? They wrote some of the original code that for CryptoNote that was then used for Monero. And
mhm.
so you have some credibility there. And, we can't verify everything that people do. Like, the whole don't trust, verify, I think is total
Yeah,
bullshit. By the way, I don't subscribe to that terminology. There is
okay.
always a level of trust. Now, you want to trust
Yeah,
minimize,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
part of that is, what's your reputation? Okay, these guys have actually written code that was used in Monero before Monero
Mhm,
was launched. Um, and then number two, that they had given it more utility, right?
yeah,
That additional utility of token tokens on a private blockchain where the tokens are fully private. And also, many people don't know this, not only are the tokens private, meaning you don't know the amount and you don't know who's the sender and who's the recipient, but on the Zano blockchain, because there are many tokens, you don't even know which token is getting sent, right? That's
mhm.
like additional little nugget that enhances the privacy for all the tokens because you don't know what's actually
I
being
never
sent.
even thought about that. That's
Yeah,
actually, like, a really, really strong point. Like, I
yeah,
don't know if I'm getting private Ethereum, private Bitcoin,
yeah.
Zano.
On Monero, you're sending private Monero. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
There's
no,
no question about
that's a
it. You're sending
great
private
point.
Monero. Here you don't know what asset you're sending. So that's like
Yeah,
an additional layer of obfuscation that the other chains don't have. And then the third thing, which actually it made me excited, it completed the loop, but wasn't even available at the time I met them, was the existence of Bridgeless, right?
okay,
Or confidential layer, depends on
yeah,
their branding is kind of weird, but the existence of that, and really that's a biz dev task. Like they actually went through the trouble of making sure they had a partner that would allow bridging of these assets into Zano. And I'll tell you why. And the why is actually, in a way, a big disagreement I have with Aaron. Like I love Aaron, but I
okay,
love that we
okay.
were able to get into disagreements, like and still
Yeah, no,
be
it's
like
great, and
total
I
collabs.
wanna hear
Yeah,
different perspectives on my show. That's why I have a show.
yeah, exactly. So fundamentally, Zano is not a programmable chain,
Okay,
right? You cannot program Zano. It doesn't have smart contracts. So when you have a
mhm,
token on Zano, that token is purely backed by whoever minted the token, right?
okay,
That is the promise, right? Is I minted this token and you're just trusting me with whatever this token is supposed to mean.
mhm,
Is it supposed to mean shares in Tesla? Well, then you're promising me that I am promising to you. You're trusting me that there's some Tesla shares underneath that. Or is it a dollar-based coin? Well, you're trusting me that there's some dollars behind it.
yeah,
So know that every token minted on Zano, right, unless it has a decentralized bridge behind it, is a
mhm,
100% trust token.
okay,
Every single one,
yeah,
right? If there is a bridge and that bridge actually has validators that
mhm,
are, the state of the validator set is always like, who knows? It could be three, it could be one, it could be 200, it could be 2,000
mhm,
validators. But at least the technology allows there to be multiple validators that have to come to consensus to say, lock up some asset like Bitcoin on one chain, mint
mhm,
BTCX on
yeah,
Zano, and
yeah,
vice versa, right? That's the only time when you don't have a trust in a central party, right? When there is that validator set. And so the existence of Bridgeless confidential layer got me excited because like, oh my gosh, now this is the privacy layer for other assets. And
Yeah.
that's actually the reason why we said, yes, we're interested in this integration way before the launch of the integration with Bridgeless actually had happened.
Oh,
I said,
wow.
okay, because I wasn't really excited until we can get Bridgeless live. And
Okay,
so
okay.
that was the reason we were the first to do it,
Yeah.
because it completed the entire reason why I was excited about Zano in the first place.
Yeah, 'cause I
Without that.
use I use the Zano wallet, but then obviously Edge is my favorite, so I have Zano and Edge, and I mean, I just think it's so cool, and I don't see why more people aren't talking about it. Why do you think? Do you think, there's just some issues maybe with, Zano marketing, or how do we get more people excited about having private
Yeah.
Bitcoin on Zano?
The global financial system is shifting, and most people don't see it yet. For decades, the petrodollar forced global demand of the US dollar, but now we're starting to see cracks. Countries are moving away. Oil is being priced outside the dollar, and countries are dumping US treasuries. And if this trend continues, it doesn't just impact governments, it impacts your money. Hyperinflation is coming. This will impact your savings, the stock market, money mutual funds, anything tied to the dollar. All fiat currencies return to zero, and we can feel it today. But there is good news. There are things you can do to protect your wealth, because this could be worse than 2008. For me, it's all about owning real assets like gold, silver, and crypto, and doing it in a tax-advantaged way. This is why I use iTrust Capital. With iTrust Capital, I can buy and sell physical gold, silver, alongside 90 cryptocurrencies in one platform with 24/7 trading and no monthly fees. They even have a premium custody account if you want more flexibility outside of an IRA. And right now, they're offering a limited 2% match when you fund your account. And you can get a $100 signing bonus if you use my link. If you're thinking about protecting your wealth and making a move, this is worth looking into. Check it out with the link down below.
Oh, so this is a long convo I actually had with Gonzalo on the Zano team.
Okay, I
And
don't think I'm familiar with
I'm
him.
gonna he does some of the marketing as well. He's from I don't want to misstate the Latin American country, but I know he's
Okay.
from a Latin American country. I want to say Argentina. I
Oh,
could be
cool.
wrong. But one of the challenges, and I think this is how Zano could consider positioning themselves, like in private
Yeah.
Bitcoin, who's the most valuable user are Bitcoiners.
Yeah, of course.
So, but if you show up to like a Bitcoin conference or a podcast, say, hey, where's Zano? Right?
Yeah.
There's no community more hatred of any other asset than Bitcoin, than the Bitcoin community. They are generally maxis. If there's anything that
Yeah.
they need to touch to be able to send their Bitcoin or swap their Bitcoin or take out a loan in Bitcoin, if they have to touch any other coin, it is a shit coin. They
Yeah.
would rather go to a fully centralized service like BlockFi or Celsius to take out a loan against their Bitcoin than use DeFi and have to pay $5 in Ethereum.
It's
That
so
is
weird. Yeah.
that is the asinine mentality of very hardcore Bitcoiners. It's like, no, this isn't BlockFi, you know. And even when like DAI came out, DAI unfortunately didn't get a whole lot of traction. It got decent for a decentralized stablecoin, but not a ton. And many were like, oh, just use Tether, right? Oh,
No.
like, oh goodness, right? They'd rather do that than one that, because DAI was collateralized with ETH,
Okay.
right? But they'd rather use Tether, trust Tether, the company, that the money's in the bank and whatnot. And so they're more of a, hey, we'll happily centralize than use another coin. But anyway, getting back to Zano, that becomes a hard sell. But a way you could remove that hard sell, and I've talked about with the Zano team, is actually to enable what I'd call gasless swaps. I'm not sure if you're
Okay.
familiar with this in the Ethereum ecosystem. So in Ethereum, in order for you to send any token, you have to pay ETH.
Mhm.
Or to send ETH, you have to pay ETH. Well, there is a mechanism by which you can send a token without ETH, because you end up having a um, kind of a service, like a non-custodial service, pay your ETH, and they take a little bit of the other asset that you're trying to swap or send.
Okay.
So
Okay.
say you're trying to send USDC, um, you can swap USDC for, say, some other asset like Tether,
Mhm.
and a service called 0x, a 0x protocol, will actually go and pay the ETH for you and take a cut out of your USDC to do the swap.
Oh, okay.
And so to someone that just has USDC and just wants Tether, they can do that without having any ETH. the ETH is still paid, but it comes out of the USDC.
Mm-hmm.
And so if Zano were able to enable that type of gasless swap, and they can use something like confidential layer to do this. Like confidential layer was, to my knowledge, was built so that you can do swaps,
Mm-hmm.
both transparent and non-transparent coins on Zano.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You could enable what is basically private Bitcoin invisible, at least the Zano side is invisible to the Bitcoiner. And you can do it for Ethereum as well. You can do it for Bitcoin Cash and build an app that's like a Bitcoin Cash app, a Bitcoin app, an Ethereum app. But anytime you receive money, it's automatically shielded,
Mm-hmm.
right, into the shielded tokens. And then when you send it, you don't even have to have Zano. It can automatically then send the token and bridge it right out into Bitcoin, right? Like BTCX automatically into Bitcoin. Now, this is not an easy task.
No,
right?
not at all. It doesn't sound like it.
But it's a very exciting one. And so I'm hoping that movement, that initiative, could start to take hold within Zano, because then they could really market themselves to all the different communities. It's like, hey, we are the way that you can transact those coins privately, and you don't even have to know that there's Zano under the hood. Much like if you've ever used the DEX. I'm not sure. Have you ever had someone from Thorchain or Maya Protocol on the show?
No, I
Know those
haven't. I would like
protocols?
to have someone from Maya
Oh,
on here, though, in the near
like
future.
we're having Alux, who's the head of Maya, come over to San Diego in
Oh, okay.
3 weeks.
Okay.
He'll be here in 3 weeks, presenting at the meetup.
Oh, amazing.
Head of Maya. But when you use those protocols to swap, say, Bitcoin to ETH, you never touch cacao for Maya, right? When you use Thorchain to swap Bitcoin for ETH, you never touch Rune. It is powering it underneath the hood,
Yeah,
right? You're paying fees with it underneath the hood. But as the user, you don't have to see it. And so that's what I think if Zano had, then they could complete that user experience of like,
no, absolutely, and it
I'm
seems like
privatizing my Bitcoin.
a lot of projects do that, and that's just making it also like more user friendly. So were they pretty responsive to your ideas?
In that chat I had with Gonzalo, he was like, wow.
He's like mind
Right?
blown.
He's like, this would be really cool. But then you get to like, well, what do you need to do technically? And that's where
Yeah,
things get a little bit challenging. And that's where you
money.
go,
Yeah.
it's money, and it's less about money. I think it's now like the cryptography needed, especially because you have this private blockchain, and also the coordination between two different projects, the actual DEX and the chain. You know, like in order to do this on Ethereum with 0x, there's a little bit of coordination between the token that you're trying to swap, like USDC, providing the support, the chain allowing what are called permits, which are a way to say, I give you permission to remove the money, and the DEX. So it's like a coordination challenge as well.
Okay.
For example, like USDT, it's an old token, and they never updated the smart contract for USDT. You cannot do this with Tether. You can't do it with USDT. You can't send USDT without having some ETH, although there are some chain upgrades to Ethereum that should enable this now.
Okay.
But know that, see, it's this coordination effort
Yeah.
in addition to the technology, which is in addition to the money, right?
Yeah.
The actual implementation.
Mr. CryptoNote should be able to figure this out.
Yeah, they're smart guys over
Yeah,
there, right?
no
Yeah,
problem.
they can figure it out. So know that this is the long 10-minute answer
Yeah,
to the
no, I
question
mean,
of
it's
like,
super
hey, what can
technical,
Zano do?
but I mean, I think it's interesting, and I'm always curious because of Zano's tech. I think it's going to be huge one day. I really believe in the project. I know we're all going to the Bitcoin conference together. I think it would be cool if we all wore like BTCX
Yeah.
t-shirts.
I've actually proposed that Zano should sponsor, the Bitcoin conference as BTCX. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now
we should
remove the Zano
we should
branding
get
and have a
some merch
logo.
made.
Have like
Yeah,
a BTCX logo made, all right? Like a
yeah.
normal like ticker symbol, logo image, and then arrive as that. Yeah.
So this is really exciting, and I've interviewed Harry from NIM, Mixnet on the
Yeah.
show before. It was
Great guy.
great interview, and I'm really excited. I'm going to be a part of your guys' spaces next week. But you guys are actually the first and only multi-asset wallet with a built-in Mixnet.
Yeah.
This is really huge. I just want to talk about this integration and just really how even when you are interacting with like a private blockchain, still your metadata can be leaked. And first of all, I'd love for you to kind of like explain to, the average person watching what metadata is and kind of the risks of that and what your integration with NIM really looks like.
Right. So metadata is a pretty general term. So let me define it based on like what NIM and Mixnets provide. So the metadata that you normally leak when you get onto the network is primarily what is your IP address.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're connecting through an ISP that knows who you are, like your home ISP or phone, they
Okay.
generally know who you are with a few exceptions. Like maybe you go to the library, doesn't know who you are. You're at the airport, doesn't know who you are,
Yeah.
right? But you are definitely connecting through most ISPs where they know who you are. Even your VPN kind of knows who you are because you
Yeah.
probably registered for the VPN using an email address. And so they know who you are, and they may not know what data you're sending over the network, but they know what server you're connecting to.
Okay.
So let's define that as the metadata that's leaking. It's
Okay.
who you are, your IP address, which can then 99% of the time get tied to who you are, and then what server you're connecting to, whether that's
Okay.
Facebook, Meta, Google, or whatever other website that you probably don't want people knowing that you're connecting to. But what you're doing on the website generally isn't known, right?
Okay.
That they don't know. The website, however, that you're connecting to, not only does your ISP know your
Mm-hmm.
IP address and who you are, the website now also knows your IP address. They don't necessarily know who you are unless you give that info to them, but in cooperation with an ISP, they could know who you are. And some ISPs are also the website. Let's take, for example, Google. Right? Google Fi admittedly offers a really good product, right? SIM or eSIM product that works around the world for a low cost. So now you have Google as your ISP, and then when you go to the website of any Google product, then Google's also the product. And so they know the
Mm-hmm.
full path. Um,
Yeah.
so that's the metadata that's leaked. What do mixnets do? The world's most popular sort of mixnet is Tor,
Yeah.
right? And that's one that we've been trying to integrate since 2015. We've wanted to put Tor
Oh,
into
wow.
Edge since we built our original app called Airbits. Um, at the time, Tor was literally an app, a monolithic app that you'd have to run on your computer and have your other apps connect to it to then shuffle the traffic and send it out to the Tor network. And what the
Okay.
Tor network does is it bounces traffic across a bunch of different servers to get to the final server. So the final server you want to access knows the server that they immediately talk to, but they don't know where you came from. And the server you talk to knows who you are, but it doesn't know where you're going. And so
Okay.
as long as you make enough hops, the belief is you will have good privacy because you
Mm-hmm.
hop through different entities. Um, but it's widely believed that a lot of the servers in Tor are run by like the CIA. You know,
Yeah.
they'd built the network because they needed it for their own privacy, right?
And doesn't
Um,
Tor get a bunch of government funding?
mhm. Yeah, to my
Yeah.
understanding, it was built by the government. It's funded
Yeah.
by the government. Anybody can run a node and contribute into the network, and anybody can pick different nodes that they use when they connect to Tor. But if most of the nodes are run by the government, then oh well. And not only that, Tor doesn't cost anything to run a node other than the cost of a node, literally just the cost of a computer.
Yeah.
And it's actually very hard to tell whether or not 500 nodes are 500 computers or literally one. Because
Oh, interesting.
you could put 500 IP addresses on the same computer and they'll
Okay.
look like 500 computers, right?
Ah, okay. Yeah.
And so it starts to go like, well, how much can you really trust Tor, right?
Yeah.
And so here comes NIM and why I'm kind of excited about it. So NIM solves this problem by not only just hopping your traffic across multiple nodes, it also breaks up your traffic. It says, that one image you want to send over to a website, it'll slice that up and send it across multiple different nodes. And
Mm-hmm.
then they get recollected at the end and then sent over to the website. And they put in timing delays. So when it's broken up, it might take a little longer to go here than for this to go here to make it harder for the network to realize that those packets are from the same person, right? And then as well, and this is a little important nugget, it costs actual money that you have to stake to run a node.
Okay.
So you can't take those 500 IP addresses and stick them on one server and call yourself 500 nodes because you actually have to stake money, per quote unquote node. And so it costs more than just simply that one computer. So they attacked it from multiple levels,
Mm-hmm.
which made it compelling. And of course, them being a cryptocurrency project aligns a whole lot
Yeah.
with my ethos, and you can actually use them as a VPN with no personal information. They're one of the only VPNs you can use, no email, no phone number, no nothing,
Yeah, and you
right?
can pay for it with privacy
And you
coins. I
pay
think
for
they accept even
exactly.
Zano now. Yeah.
Zano, Monero, and their NIM token isn't a privacy coin. It's really meant for the network, but you can pay with a NIM
Yeah.
token as well.
Yeah.
And so that's what, I'd say excites me about NIM. And then also from a builder's point of view, this is technically your audience might not care. They actually made it a lot easier for us to integrate than Tor.
Oh,
Right? Tor was this
interesting.
monolithic app. They've built Tor libraries, software development kits that you let you
Okay.
put it in another app. Not not friendly at all. Like super difficult to use. NIM had something that was fairly easy to use. It didn't work when we first tried it, but that's what's nice about actually getting to physically meet the CEO and
Yeah.
founder. Harry's been great. I've interviewed him as well. We actually have gone back and forth for over a year and a half on what it would take to get like NIM integrated. Actually, no, not a year and a half. Sorry, I think that was I'm mixing up my days. Probably like a year on
Yeah.
what it takes to get NIM integrated. We'd try something, wouldn't work. He'd get it back to their team. They'd give us some feedback. We'd try it again. And so it's been a true collab on getting their code to work within an app like Edge. Um, and so all the stars aligned to get this thing up and running, and we're excited. It's improving every release, every
Yeah.
couple releases of Edge, which is like every release that they do of the SDK gets it faster and faster and faster. And I like how Harry has the same North Star goal that we do.
Yeah.
I always say privacy is no good unless it's the default, which is
Yeah.
why I like Monero, I like Zano, and I
Yeah.
give Zcash a hard time, even though I'm really close to their team and I want them to improve,
I
right?
like Zcash too, but I give them a
Yeah,
hard time as
I give them a
well.
hard time. Like it's what
Yeah.
it's like tough love as a parent, right? Like
Yeah.
tough love to your kid, you give tough love to projects you love, but even though you point out where they've faltered, and privacy by default is where they faltered. Well, our integration with NIM is not by default, meaning you have to turn it on.
Okay.
But Harry and I have the same North Star where we want it to be fast and reliable enough
Mhm.
where it's on by default,
Yeah. So
right?
what when do you think that will happen, when it'll be on by default? Like any user that's accessing the Edge app, because I know Mixnets are a little bit slow. So
They are definitely
um
slow.
yeah,
Yep.
I guess what would
So
be a timeline?
God, I've heard Harry say something like a year,
Oh wow, it's pretty
but
soon.
that's that to me, I thought was pretty soon. I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
fast. So you know how it is. Like he's probably cracking the whip to his devs, and his devs are like, "Why did you say that, Harry?"
Yeah.
But I can't speak on his behalf. And also, since I'm not in their code or in their
Mhm.
implementation, I don't want to make any predictions outside of what they're able to do,
Yeah.
because we're mostly locked on what they're
Yeah.
capable of. And
So
even if we have it on by default, it might not be by default on all the network traffic. Like right now, when you enable it in Edge, you choose where you want to use it. Basically, it's which
okay.
assets. So do
Okay.
you want it for Monero? Do you want it for Cosmos chains like NIM is a Cosmos chain? Do you want it for Ethereum chains? Which Ethereum chain? Because the more you enable,
Mhm.
the kind of slower it would get,
Okay. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I'd love to at least have it enabled for, you know, automatically by default for one asset.
Yeah.
Like maybe Monero as just the default.
I'm good.
But I know that's
I'm gonna definitely put it on for Monero and Zano.
give it a try. Give it a try for Monero. Zeno isn't supported because it uses a different type of networking
Oh,
protocol,
okay. Okay.
right? And actually, funny is once we launched NIM support, once we marketed it, because we had it kind of quietly launched, right? Marketing
Yeah.
didn't announce it, but once marketing announced it, I swear it was within an hour that the Zano team pinged us. Hey, how do we get this for Zano? Right? All right.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Let's talk. Here's some of the protocols that it can support, what it can't. And I know Zcash is trying to do it at their layer, and so maybe
Oh,
you can
cool.
work on implementation similar to how they are doing it. So I love that there's like excitement around it,
Yeah, no, me
and
too,
that
and I'm excited to see, like, Harry continue to succeed because I I love his mission, I really believe in
well,
it, I believe in your mission, and it's cool to see, like, different privacy projects come together and
yep,
actually fight for humanity rather than being tribal like
no,
Bitcoin
exactly, yeah,
maxis. So
yep,
it's cool to
exactly.
see, like, different projects coming together, and I don't know, it's like, I started my podcast in November, and it's been very cool to see the overlap in people who are working together. It's really exciting to
And
me.
we have to. We especially in an I mean, a lot of people think we're an older industry now, but I still think we're nascent because our adoption curve
Yeah,
hasn't hit full mainstream. And so in an early industry, you kind of have to collab. You can't do it all yourself, right? You
yeah,
really have to collab. Anyone who's trying to be vertically integrated, I think will realize they don't do any one thing very well enough.
Yeah.
So for sure, I'm excited about the collabs. NIM's been a perfect partner with the ethos that we have. I use the NIM VPN exclusively myself
Yeah.
as well. So I encourage anyone who uses or has considered using a VPN, and if you don't, you should try out the NIM VPN. It uses the Mixnet, but in a more what I call they notch down the privacy for much better performance.
It's way
Right?
faster.
It's notably faster. So I can't exactly speak on behalf of what changed, but I know that they don't do as many hops. So there's fewer
Okay.
hops. I think it's only 2 hops, right? I think they notched down other things like the time delays.
Yeah.
So you don't have the same level of privacy as the full Mixnet, but you get way better privacy than using any other VPN,
Oh,
right? So
absolutely, because VPNs are, for the most part, centralized,
they're
and it's
centralized
like
honeypots.
if they're subpoenaed, the government has all of your information, whereas
Yep.
with NIM, that's just not possible.
With you can subpoena NIM all you want,
Yeah.
and they'll only be able to provide information for whatever nodes they run, if they happen to run
Mhm.
any. Otherwise, you'd have to subpoena all the different nodes. And so at least with the VPN, so that with the VPN, you pick your entry and exit country and node. So I could say, okay, I'm
Mhm.
in the US, I'm going to enter via a US node, and then that hops into some other node, which you can pick somewhere else, like Brazil. And so now the US node knows who I am, it knows my IP address. The Brazil knows where I'm going, but it doesn't know who I am. All
Okay.
right. And the entry node doesn't know where I'm going. It only knows my IP address. And the nice thing is anybody can be a node,
Mhm.
right? So there's not like one entity to subpoena one giant honeypot of everybody's traffic. So you get this hugely improved privacy, but from what I can tell, pretty much the speed of any other VPN. Like the speed has
Yeah.
actually been very, very good. And I was using it on my phone. I think they launched a desktop app, so I'm also using it on my computer. And so it's a pretty complete experience. And like I said, no email needed. It's funny. It's like a 24-word seed or 12-word seed is your
Yeah, and
account
pay
on
with
NIM.
crypto.
You pay with crypto, although once you pay, you get credit. But your account is literally a 12-word seed. And I've actually had chats with Harry. I was like, hey, I think we can improve the UX of having to store a 12-word seed just for your VPN account. Maybe Edge can help on that regard. So some other stuff we'll do in the
Yeah, maybe
future.
aliases in the future, or I don't know. I mean, it's so interesting, like, even with crypto addresses, being able to improve on that, because I think that's not very user-friendly. Like, I say a
Yeah.
story pretty often about, just messing up with some swaps when you enter in an
Mhm.
address wrong, and then you get into some trouble. So it would be nicer to see improvements on that front.
Yeah, no, there's definitely great areas for improvement there. Anytime you have to see a jumble of letters and numbers, and if you have to type them, that's worse. If a copy paste, not so bad. Scan a QR
Yeah.
code, not so bad. But if you ever had to type them, you want something that's human readable. Um, and then from the viewpoint of whatever you have to save, you have to secure it.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
like the 12 and 24 words become much more unfriendly, especially if you have multiple of them. One for your
Oh my
VPN,
gosh.
one for your
Yeah.
ETH, one for your Bitcoin.
For
Um,
for most non-custodial wallets, it's like that.
No, exactly. So,
Yeah.
and that's why we're still sub 1%
Yeah.
adoption in self custody. It's still a very,
Ye
very small percentage of the population, but we hope to change that.
Yeah, well, Edge already has. You guys make it
Yeah.
way,
Yep.
way, way more easy. Another thing that I noticed when I was just looking on the website yesterday, I didn't know about this yet.
Mm.
I'm a big believer in gold and silver. I believe in holding it physically, but I do think it's pretty interesting that you guys have tokenized gold and silver on
Yep.
available on Edge, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
So really, it's gold in a vault. And you're trusting someone,
Yeah,
and for now, I guess that's really our only option on chain. And so I would say it's the better ETF. That is kind of the flaw of a lot of the precious metal tokens right now. No one has
yeah.
really come out with, at least if anyone has, and you're listening to the show, please ping me. I'm just not aware of it. But there isn't like a decentralized gold token, that is, you know, collateralized with ETH or Bitcoin and gives you the price exposure to gold or
Mhm,
silver. It's the better version of ETF because you're not dealing with all of the regulatory overhead
mhm.
and all of the KYC needed to go and transact an ETF on like E-Trade,
Ah,
right?
true.
I can have Bitcoin and suddenly boom, I've got gold tokens just
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
But it is still a trust model. I want to make sure people are very, very aware of that. You are trusting someone
yeah,
to hold the gold.
yeah.
And these tokens have actually existed for quite some time. Admittedly, we shamelessly said, well, let's plug them because So precious metals are going up in price. This is me being bluntly honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes to a fault. It's like, all right, silver and gold are going up in price and crypto's going down. All right. Well, this has always been in our app, right? It's because
Yeah.
they're just simply Ethereum tokens, Solana tokens. And so, sure, we'll let people know this is an option. And for the gold bugs out there, and you want price exposure, and even if you wanted to sell your Bitcoin for it, well, you can do it here, right? If you feel like, exit your crypto for at least the time being, you don't have to go and sell it to the bank and take the
Mhm.
dollars and put it into your E-Trade account and then go buy an ETF, or, although physical gold is still the absolute best way to hold it.
Yeah, of
No
course.
question about it.
We're all about self-custody, but it
Self-custody.
is
That's the
cool
only
that
true
you can have
self-custody.
it's cool that you can have exposure via
Yep.
Edge. So I think that's a great thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and also recently I made a video about duress mode, and I
Oh,
think
cool.
this is such a cool feature in Edge. And actually, like, I think I showed my dad that video, and he's like, "This is really cool. Like, more people need to use
Nice.
this." And I think it's just like you guys are so creative, and you guys I feel like think of everything. But I would just love to hear more about this feature because I think this could really be very beneficial to the everyday person.
No, I think it is. It's one that I've talked about within our team and through a few people for God, the better half of our company's existence.
Hmm.
And I don't know why it took us so long to build it. Oh, I mean, I remember it was on a plane flight home. I said, let me hack together something to see whether or not I can get a basic duress mode to work. And at the end of, I think, a 4-hour flight, I had a basic hack together thing work. It was janky, but I'm like, all right, here's a starting point. Now I can hand it over to the smarter devs and go, all right, like if I can hack together something in 4 hours, you guys can make something that actually is production caliber, hopefully in 8, 12, 16 hours of heads down work. It took more than 16 hours, but they came up with something really, really nice that far exceeded what I had hacked together. And so duress mode, for those that hadn't seen Bree's video, and check it out if you haven't,
Thank you.
is is simply an a setting in your account in Edge that lets you create a sub account. We call it a sub account that can hold keys. So the beauty of Edge is it's not just one private key.
Yeah.
It's basically a data vault of all
Hmm.
of your keys and all encrypted along with all of your accounts information, like your settings, are all
Hmm.
encrypted into this vault. And now you can create this secondary vault, which holds a different set of keys. The difference is when you enter your PIN into Edge, if you enter a different PIN, this Duress PIN, it unlocks that secondary vault, and then that's
Hmm.
what you see, and it's 99.99999% indistinguishable from your regular account. Right? Looks the same, and so yeah, if you're under duress, forced to unlock your Edge account against your will, you can unlock with the Duress PIN, and only as these other keys. Now these are real keys; they hold real money. Um, and it's probably, smart to put some real money in there, but not like your big stash,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
small stash that you're like, okay, send it out. You got my money. Right. But then your real account is now hidden away. And one little note that I mentioned, which is one of the improvements that our smarter devs did, over my quick hack project, was they made it such that the accounts that you create in your the wallets you create in your Dress account actually show up in your main account. So you can
Hmm.
use those as your regular spending money. Like when you go to Monerotopia and buy some tacos, you go to Pork Fest and buy pizza. God, I love spending crypto. It's like, it just feels real when you do it. And so
Yeah.
you could spend out of those duress wallets when you do your normal login. But then if you're under duress, they show up as like normal wallets that you really use, and seems more believable that this is actually your money, right? And you can say, oh no, I don't keep anything more than that, when I'm out and about. I leave it at home or whatnot on a different phone. So
Yeah.
it completed that picture because so many people, we've always had to defend what we call the security of like a mobile device. Like especially early on, it was easy to defend because like laptops were terrible security. Most people were running Windows for Christ's sakes, you know. And so like yeah, your mobile device is the most secure. But the
Hmm.
biggest thing people always said that made them fearful, like they wanted to run Edge on a computer, even though it was a bigger attack surface,
Yeah, of course.
was was the fact that, oh, but I bring my phone with me,
Yeah, you
and
have your
and
phone with you attached to your hip all the time.
exactly. Whereas like, well, my laptop, it's at home and someone have to break into
Offline,
my
maybe. Yeah.
house, and then get to the laptop, whatnot. I go, even though digitally is less secure, it was physically more secure because they didn't bring it with them, right? Maybe it's a desktop, not even a laptop. And so like, that's a good point, right? I'm not gonna argue that. But what can we do then to make your phone more secure? This is one aspect of it, right? It's not a complete solution, but it solves the concern of being forced to unlock your device where people can then take your funds. It doesn't, doesn't fix that I lost my phone, right? Although Edge already has that built in, just get a new phone and log in. But from the viewpoint of that physical threat, we wanted to solve that problem that people have, criticized, having funds on a phone concern for quite some time. So, I can't say we just come out of it, come up with the stuff out of nowhere. It's because people tell us.
Yeah.
And it was actually a Bitcoin maxi old friend of mine who had been pushing for it for quite some time. I was about to say his name, but he's like, well, then people are going to know that he uses Duress mode. So I won't. All right. And so I
Yeah.
won't for now.
No,
But yeah,
we do not use duress mode.
yeah, we don't use Duress mode here. That really is my full account, right? I mean, I know I would be a big target. So Duress mode probably wouldn't protect me, but there's millions of other people who it will protect. And I think
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
important
absolutely.
piece, right?
Yeah.
We're building for everyone else, not just us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, enable duress mode on Edge because it could really save you. And
Protect
then
your funds. Yep.
I would love to just end on talking about like what could lead to more adoption for people actually transacting with crypto. And I know you guys are obviously doing so much in the app to lead to greater usage, but what do you think is going to happen, like have to happen on basically like a national scale for more people to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
actually accepting crypto rather than, niche communities,
Yeah, like
transacting.
Forkfest and whatnot.
Yeah.
I actually got it. I had this question, I think, with Doug Tooman. You know him from
Yeah.
Meritopia, and it's a project that I wanted to start myself, and I kind of sort of did, but it's I don't have the bandwidth for this. But back in, I'm not sure when you kind of got into like Bitcoin and crypto, but back in 2014, 2015, merchants taking Bitcoin was really, I would call it skyrocketing. It was going up, not high, like hockey stick, but pretty linearly going up. And here, my hometown of San Diego, I think we had like 30 different merchants taking Bitcoin. Now that sounds small relative to the grand scheme of merchants, but it was just increasing month over month. Then it ground to a halt, especially with the block size wars and Bitcoin fees skyrocketing and whatnot. But I noticed there was one big pain point with all those merchants that would have kept them accepting Bitcoin through all those challenges. And that pain point was the integration of a point of sale,
Okay.
right? Every point of sale system that takes Bitcoin either only takes Bitcoin and crypto. Now it's Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, or it's a point of sale system that's just for fiat with very, very little overlap. Probably the only overlap that I've successfully seen has been Square with Bitcoin Lightning.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'll give hats off to Jack Dorsey for getting that integration in place, but he's such a Bitcoin maxi that all you can pay with is Lightning. And Lightning has challenges of its own. It's overcome a whole bunch of those challenges at a pretty, ironically, at the expense of what the Bitcoiners didn't like about Ethereum and Solana. Basically, they're just using other L2s that are similar to Ethereum and Solana. They're using those, the exact technology that they criticized, but those technologies are what are making Lightning usable today. So either way,
And with Square is custodial, right? Like versus maybe using like Edge or Bitcoin.com.
Well, so Square isn't so much the wallet, it's the payment processor.
Oh, okay.
So they made it almost like a one-tap grandma just button to enable accepting Bitcoin at a merchant. Now, the merchant never sees Bitcoin. It's instantly sold. It's just another dollar transaction into their ledger. And so they have, I don't even know if they have an option of receiving Bitcoin. They might.
Oh,
And
okay. So then they're not even, so the merchant's not even accepting Bitcoin. It's just immediately, okay.
It's immediately settled. Now, there might be the option for them to accept Bitcoin. I haven't gone into all the merchant side settings and admin to figure out if they can even receive the Bitcoin. And so it's hardly accepting Bitcoin. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I don't count that if they're not even, that's interesting.
But at least it enables people to pay with it, right? So, I mean, if you think about it, anytime you fund a debit card with crypto,
Yeah.
that merchant that you spend it on is not accepting crypto, right? To that
No,
same
no,
degree,
it's
right?
obviously accepting fiat, but it's just a
They're
way
accepting
for
fiat.
you to be able to spend.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
and
the
that's, and
same
I'm
thing with,
guilty of that. That's
no,
how
I am
I
too, right? I am too
yeah,
as well. So like gift cards, I use Bitrefill and whatnot.
every
So
day.
yeah, so it's the same kind of partial crypto usage. But a true crypto native point of sale that also includes rich fiat support and
Mhm.
includes rich crypto support where the merchant can actually accept crypto itself or settle it out using like a merchant processor like
Yeah.
BitPay. Um, that I think is one of the biggest blockers. And I think um, the challenge now is that point of sales have become so much more rich than they were before,
Yeah.
right? They're not just take my money. It's your menu, it's your inventory processing, some of it even your payroll and your clock in, clock out management
Mhm.
for staff. That for something to come in and compete with that, they just have a much bigger product to build than just a point of sale.
Yeah.
If anyone remembers, I used Square in its early days.
Okay.
All it was you entered an amount you wanted to collect on your phone,
Yeah.
Android, iPhone, and you had this tiny little dongle that went into the headphone jack, and you could swipe a card, and that's it. It was
Yeah.
nothing other than that. Now, as a point of sale, it's a behemoth. When I say behemoth, I mean the features are a behemoth. And so it is a harder kind of barrier to entry. But if someone can build that and achieve decent adoption, that can ripple effect into more and more merchants. And I've
Mhm.
proposed that an open source product could do this because other payment processors are willing to get into an open source product that are locked out of Square,
Yeah.
right? There's tons of credit card payment processors in the country and the world, and most of them are locked out of the biggest point of sales because the biggest ones are their own merchant processor,
Mhm.
such as Square, Clover, Toast, right, in restaurants. So they're locked out of those. Make an open source one where any payment processor can contribute a plugin that lets your credit cards go through this,
Mhm.
um, where Alipay can be supported, and then crypto
Yeah,
can be
and just have
supported in
QR
there.
codes for everything. I feel
Everything,
like
most of them are QR codes now as well. Square
yeah,
even
and
is.
I'm surprised. I don't know, just I go to farmers markets a lot. I'm always surprised when places don't accept crypto. I'm always like, "Oh, like, do you accept
It's simple.
most cryptocurrencies?" And they're look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, you would think those type of
I know.
business would be a little bit more keen on
If
that.
you can get them the equivalent of the thing that they would hold on their phone, that could be the MVP for this point of sale, right? Simple on the phone,
Yeah.
doesn't have a whole lot of fancy features, but allows someone to accept, credit card and crypto,
Mhm.
right? All on the same device, and it feels just like a Square, right? It doesn't feel janky like a developer built it in the 90s. Then I think you have at least that MVP that can start to latch into a few communities. Because we've had companies ask us, "Hey, we want to accept crypto." The coffee shop downstairs or our office wanted to. This is before
Yeah.
Square integrated Lightning, and
Okay.
they're like, I can't recommend any solution for you. There's like not a good one because they have to take credit cards and cash and whatnot."
Mhm.
So that would be my, you know, 10-minute answer to what do I think it would take to get crypto adoption, especially for payments.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it would that
you
piece.
guys need to add that to your plate.
That's a huge project, I gotta admit, and it's separate from Edge the app. It's a whole it
Yeah,
has to be a totally different app, like,
completely separate.
iPad, maybe 2 screens, one for the merchant, one for the user. You've seen that, that kinda
Yeah.
setup. Yeah,
Well,
but,
that's amazing. Well, any other exciting updates happening with Edge?
um, nothing that we're ready to announce
Okay.
that I think is meaningful enough for people on your show to hear about. A lot of incremental stuff will come down the pipe for
Yeah.
sure. Like maybe some more exchange partners, more asset support here and
Mhm.
that. Um, some of the bigger changes I think are still a little bit more under the hood,
Okay.
getting
Well
fully decided and put on the roadmap.
well,
Um,
can't wait
but
to see it. And it's always nice to see very liberty-minded people coming out of California. I'm from California as well, so
yeah,
I always laugh when people think that California is, when they hate on California a little too much, and
yeah, I think in the
there's
current day
great
and current
here.
past decade, it's easy to do that. I like to send people back in history and remind them like the libertarian movement actually started in like Southern California, for the entire US. And
Mhm.
so it is a bit of an epicenter of
Yeah.
liberty. And I went to school in Berkeley, which is now like the woke, kind of nightmare of California. But remember, that was the epicenter of like the hippies.
Yeah.
That was a liberty movement,
Mhm.
right? I want to put whatever drugs I want in my body,
Yeah.
right? And so there's still like this latch on to liberty movement. And the
Absolutely.
one of the cool part is when you find some of those others, you really band together strong. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
we've got to band together, because if you can drive liberty into a region like California, it'll spread nationwide, right?
Mhm.
It's one of those, like, California, as much as people love to hate it, still is an anchor of the economy and an anchor of culture. And so
Absolutely.
while it's gone downhill, I don't disagree with that at all. Any ability to turn it is a huge lever to the rest of the country.
Yeah.
And so um, there's something to be said about people leaving, because it makes
Mhm.
California suffer. And when it suffers, it
Yeah.
changes,
Yeah.
right? And then there's something to be said about the people that are still here fighting from within.
Yeah.
And so you need both paths. I'm just
Mhm.
taking one of those other paths,
Yeah.
which
That
is
gave
I'm
me
going to fight
chills,
from
and
within.
it's true, like, my family still lives in California, and I spend a lot of time in California, and,
Mhm.
I'm proud to be from here, and there's
Mhm.
been so much innovation that has obviously come out of California, and, it's really exciting too with just the AI movement, in the Bay Area right now, but,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we definitely can be saved, and, people follow trends, and they follow what's going on in California.
Yep. Very true. Cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on my show today,
Of
Paul. It
course.
was a pleasure, and, everyone, please check out Edge. Like I said, it's my favorite, non-custodial wallet, and,
Cool.
it's just a
Thanks so
great
much.
product that leads to a lot more financial freedom.
Oh, Bree, thanks so much. Super appreciate the kudos. Thanks for having me on the show. Look forward to chatting again in the future.